Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this IT security webinar. I'd like to introduce a number of people. Firstly, to my left, which might be your right, is Deepti, who's our operations manager. Got Tom Atkinson, who is one of our senior IT specialists. Also on the line, we have Philip Meyer, who is from Microsoft, who'll be helping us with the presentation. And we also have Cole Johnson, our marketing manager, on board. So again, thank you very much for joining us. Just want to go through a couple of housekeeping things before we get to the slide. That is, if you've got any questions, you'll notice on the screen that there's a Q&A button, so you can actually just put a question on there anytime during the presentation, or you can send an email to us at questions@cloudmadesimple.com.au. So you can do that at any particular time to do that.
Have we got the screen sharing?
Okay, so now you can see IT security, myself, Deepti, Tom, and Philip. I'll head off with the presentation now. This is a super important topic. The threat is real. Every week we deal with businesses that have had some sort of breach, whether it be the emails have been breached and start sending out spam to everybody on their contact list, to cryptocurrency last year was very prevalent, to all sorts of attacks that happen to their network. So every week this is happening. So the threat is real. So I don't want to scare everybody, but it is something you absolutely need to pay attention to. And here are some statistics. That 2 billion records were compromised last year. That's a big number. Sometimes it's up to 200 days between infiltration, that is someone getting into your network, and the detection of that. I think this figure is a really relevant one. For a small to medium business, which is the businesses that we look after and our clients, and it's $117,000 is the average cost to a business per breach in the SMB market. And I'm not making that up. There was a study conducted last year, over 5,000 businesses over 30 countries that had been involved in data breaches. And that was the average cost. 40% of which went out of business within 6 months. So again, I don't want to be doomsday and all negative, but it's something we just need to be aware of. And 43% of attacks are targeted at small business, because in reality, they're the types of businesses that spend the least on their security, so they're the easiest to actually get into, should I say. So who are these people? I went to a seminar the other day with Microsoft around this topic, and this stat blew me away. That from an organised crime perspective now, cyber attacks are actually worth more to them now than the drug industry, and that is phenomenal. The amount of publicity, drugs, drug dealers, etc., in that industry, organised crime now makes more money out of cyber security breaches than any other form. So it's just enormous. Other people, fraudsters, information thieves, marketers, spies. Hopefully, none of our businesses have got the military looking at us, but certainly bigger corporations. And then you're looking at governments, and you don't have to go past the election, the last American election, where the outcome may or may not have been altered because of the Russian hacking. So it is a big business. There's also vandals out there for commercial and political reasons that they'll get in and hack. And then you've got the joyriders, and they're people that are really skilled, usually psychologically challenged, and they do this stuff because they can. And the other group is insiders. So there's a lot of attacks that happen, or data goes missing because insiders take it, and they'll leak. That's called data leakage. So they're the adversaries. That's who we're up against. And these are their tools of trade, and I won't go through them all, but you can see that there is an enormous amount of a sophisticated list there of tools that they use to actually try and breach your security. And I'm going to touch on a couple of them. And just the second last one down there, just social engineering. With social networks, people just clicking on this and clicking on that and not really caring what they're clicking on, that is a real weak point within a network. So just something to be very wary about if employees are accessing any sorts of social media, that you have some protection around that from a work environment.
And Gavin, more than just that, it's Phil here. The social engineering is where they're actually using techniques now where it's Phil from Microsoft. It's spear phishing. So social engineering to the point where they're calling you up, introducing themselves as a new employee to a supplier, sending a set of flowers to the person 2 weeks into the discussion, then sending the email to that person masquerading to be the supplier that they dealt with for years, and it's not. And millions of dollars are being transferred. I know a particular incident that occurred in Adelaide. $12 million was taken from a particular entity simply by using that approach of what they call spear phishing, which is basically grooming, engineering the individual, and then hitting them with the technology later.
Yeah. It's a great story, Phil, and I've heard some catastrophic stories myself regarding a real estate agent who a similar sort of thing happened, and they were going to settle on a house, and instead of paying the money into the person's property that was going to settle, it ended up going overseas into some fraudster's account. So again, we all just have to be so aware of what's going on. I think this is a really important slide, and that is how much do you spend on security. Again, this came from a report devised last year on how much the small to medium businesses spend on IT security. The SMB market between 50 and 200 employees increased their IT spending from 16% to 19% last year. The small business, the 1 to 49 employees, rising just 1% from 13% to 14% of their IT budget. So I think that's a benchmark to at least have a look at from your own business perspective, is how much money you're actually spending on IT security. It's just something that we need to do. Also, just wanted to briefly touch upon, the security perimeter has really changed. Once upon a time, it was just your server and your own internal environment that you had to worry about. Now, with people working all over the world, within your company, you might have people working off-site. It's not only your own internal network you need to worry about; it's their network as well. So that encapsulates things like identity, devices, applications, and data. And I know Phil is going to spend a bit more time talking about this in the not too distant future. So,
and the bit you've got at the end too, Gavin, is really good, where I know that in your demonstration you're going to highlight one of the capabilities that comes available to deal with the fact that they're working from a remote location.
Yeah. So it's really important. I was going to go through just two really basic examples of what something might look like that actually is, and one of them is a phishing email. So you'll see here that they come from they look like they come from really trusted sources. So it might be from your bank. It might be from a contact or a business that you're dealing with. Sometimes one of the key giveaways is actually the URL. So it might not come from Kiwi Bank, but it might come from Kiwi Bank, and there might be an extra N in it or an extra K in it. So it's really hard to pick up. So it looks like it's coming from the bank, but it's actually not. And you'll notice the terminology of the email. It's saying that it's important, and it's really encouraging you to go and click on this link. And you'll see the HTTP of the URL there is istanbulafsaid.org. And that looks really suspect, right? That is not Kiwi Bank. And so don't click on it. And I think, and Phil and I were talking about this earlier, if it's too good to be true, so you get an email that says, great, open this up because this is a really big opportunity for you, and you haven't heard of that opportunity before, it's probably not true. So just be very wary of any emails that you get from random sources, because in 99.9% of the cases, it's actually someone trying to phish, get into your network.
Yes.
And the next example I'm going to give you is a tried and true way that hackers try to get in, and it's through attachments. And I know we're going to talk about this a bit later about one of the solutions that Microsoft has, which is brilliant, that really goes to stopping this threat. But it's through attachments. So if you get an attachment again from an email that you're probably not sure about, you click on it and it comes up with something like that message on the screen that this document may refer to other files, please don't click yes. Again, just click no and delete the email. So this is a tried and true method that's been around for a long time. So again, if you get an attachment that you're not sure about, use common sense and don't open it. So there's, in wrapping up my section before I hand it over to Phil, who's from Microsoft and is an expert in this area, there's three key areas that you need to be aware of in managing your security. One is the technology. You need to have some technology in place that will stop these attacks from occurring. And Microsoft, have got some terrific tools which Phil will talk about, but advanced threat protection is one of them, and there's many others which Phil will talk about. The second one, which is probably the most important one, managing your security, which is people, not technology, are often the weakest link. So making sure you create awareness amongst your team and educating your people about security matters is probably the best thing you can possibly do. So again, it's just going through basic things about what we've just talked about. And thirdly is putting in business processes that may stop this. And one of them is the easiest one to do. It is password management. There's so many examples where you might be logging into 10 applications during work and you've got 10 different passwords, and people are writing their passwords on pieces of paper or an Excel spreadsheet or to remember them, or using their date of birth, for example, which is not hard for a hacker to go and find out. So there's business processes that you need to put in place. And I've got a quote down there from Bill Gates, which is basically treat security as an important part of doing business. It is not less important than features and performance. So we have to be aware now of the new world, and that is being security compliant. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Phil, who's an expert in the IT area. He's a technology strategist from Microsoft. We're very fortunate to have him presenting with us today. Can I hand it over to you, Phil?
Thank you. Just checking the audio is coming through.
Yeah, good as gold.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you very much for the opportunity to talk a little bit about security in the context specifically of Microsoft 365. The first slide I wanted to share was really just supportive of the material that we've already had shared by the guys at Cloud Made Simple, which is talking about those exploitations. 75% of network intrusions exploit weak or stolen credentials. I think a lot of that comes from, I was in at a small business owner the other day, only 6 employees, 16 applications. Every single application had a different username and password combination. Some strong, many weak passwords. And that's exactly where those organised crime units, cyber terrorists are getting in on those weak credentials, creating a footprint within your network, within your systems, and they may exist there for hundreds of days, harvesting data, price lists, confidential documents, other passwords before really launching the major attack on your business. So big point is around strong credentials and consistent credentials and making it simple for customers by maybe moving to an area I'll talk about later called single sign-on. One sign-on with a strong username and password, probably your Office 365 username and password, to access thousands of applications, not just tens. And then that more than 80% of employees admit to using non-approved software. This is the shadow IT, is another term that you may have heard, where you've got staff who like a particular consumer application for tracking. I see this in the CRM space. They find there's an app out there I won't name. And they go, this is what we use for tracking our customers. Nobody's approved to use it. They've just decided to start using it. And you find that also has weak security within it and consequently becomes a threat vector inside your business. It's not just CRM, but some of those collaboration applications that are out there that are cheap and in the consumer space, they're actually not governed by US or Australian law. And I reference that because I work with the Australian Federal Police on this very topic around online safety. And they have no mechanism to shut down those services because they exist in countries that aren't places that can be governed by Australian or US law, which they have, or European law. And the last one is the mobile security. This is with over 80% of devices now accessing the internet being non-Windows devices, in other words, being iOS, iPhones, iPads, and Android devices like your Samsung Galaxies and tablets. With over 80% of those devices, they're becoming the biggest attack point now for those cyber criminals. That's the first place that they're writing their viruses and their infection points. A slide that was put up earlier where you were able to hover over the URL and see that it was Istanbul is whatever. You can do that on a PC, but you can't necessarily do that on your phones. They don't have that intelligence in the browser or inside the client to give you a rendering of what that URL is. So I commend you to think about moving back to your Mac or moving to your PC in Chrome or Edge or Safari and looking at that URL before you decide to click on it. It does take some patience. We go to the next slide. I really wanted to paint the bigger picture of sets of solutions that we, Microsoft and our partners like Cloud Made Simple, make available to you as customers. So whilst we're gravitating towards the top box Office today, and again, I thank you for using Microsoft Office, we've also launched sets of services called EMS, Enterprise Mobility and Security, which is all about really where we're going to head this presentation in a moment. It's in addition to Microsoft Office. You can see those other circles, and I know that the next seminar that our friends are going to run is on Microsoft Azure. So there's a lot of stuff there around vaulting and storage and protection and DR recovery in the database space to detect worms and viruses, in the Windows Server, the Windows and the dynamic spaces. But there's a lot of different solutions. So we click on, you'll start to see some of the terms that are used there. Cloud App Security, very key point about single sign-on, which I'm going to talk about in more detail. So why don't I do that? Go to the next slide and start getting to some of the detail that is there. Right, and that detail exists in an initiative we have launched only relatively recently, back in July. I'm not sure if the team from our partner Cloud Made Simple went to our Inspire event. Maybe they did, Cole, Gavin. But at that event, we announced Microsoft 365, which is a bundle of Office 365, which many of you use today, and has some elegant security capabilities within it. We've added to Office 365 Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite, plus Windows 10 Enterprise. Now that suite then gives you these four key tenets. Creativity, which is what you've been using Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneDrive for many, many, many years. Again, thank you for doing that. Building on teamwork, where we've now added Teams as a technology for collaboration, very much the social media, the millennial way of working, where you can have a conversation. The conversation includes attachments. Those attachments have then got co-authoring capabilities, so we can collaborate. We don't have version nightmares anymore, all in that context. We also have added in some areas things like staff hubs. So if you've got many staff that you're working as frontline workers, first-line workers, maybe on the shop floor, in the factory or out in the field, we've added that capability for the coordination and bookings. So if you want to make it easy for your customers to make bookings with you, maybe you're running a hairdressing company, maybe it's a real estate agency, if you need to establish bookings with clients, then there's a tool to support that as well. And all integrated for simplicity. So single username, single password to a raft of additional features over and above Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, Exchange, and SharePoint. But the area I'm going to drill down on is the lastware, which is intelligent security. And in that space, yep, next slide, the bright yellow one, thank you, is where we've added in the ability to protect the identity. And that identity, no matter what application they're using, what device they're using, what data they're working, and wherever they're working. So that idea that when that identity, say, signs on here in Sydney or signs in on Melbourne, and then 3 minutes later they're signing on in North Korea, we've got a problem. Something's gone wrong with those persons' credentials. So alerts can fire, and the appropriate staff in your organisation can be notified, or even the staff inside Cloud Made Simple can be notified to take remedial action on your behalf, so that your organisation's data is being protected, even when those credentials have been compromised. We've got visibility to what we call the impossible traveller, somebody thousands of kilometres away signing on 3 minutes later. It's like warp speed. Supporting those advanced attacks, the area that I'd referred to in just Office 365. It was referred to a moment ago, where somebody has an attachment. You want to open that attachment. It's a malicious attachment. What we do now is we take that attachment, and before we deliver it to you, we put it into a sandbox environment. We expand that attachment, we examine its behaviour, and determine that it may be malicious, and hence you don't get that attachment. It's destroyed, it's detonated, and you get a notification it's a malicious attachment. That's the stuff that we're doing as part of Office 365. In fact, when we go to the Microsoft 365, which is the one which includes EMS, we extend that by going to document types outside of the Office family. So PDF files, documents that are created in different graphic engines are also supported in that space. Another area that's becoming critical as we look towards the governance and compliance that Australian organisations are having imposed on them is the idea of data governing, of data archiving, governance, and discovery. So these sort of capabilities are also being added in to the Microsoft 365 range, so that you can ensure your organisation is being compliant to the new standards that are coming out, such as the National Disclosure Regulation that came into effect in Australia only last month. Moreover, the one that's coming into effect in May, which is the bottom point, GDPR. Be interested to know how many people on the call know what GDPR or what it stands for, and it's not some sort of engine oil you put in your sports car. No. GDPR is General Data Protection Regulation. It is a standard, a very comprehensive standard that I believe goes beyond that has recently been enacted in the Australian market. And if you want to do business in Europe, you'll need to basically attest that you are compliant to GDPR, that you have necessary processes in place to protect information and to disclose when information has been breached in your organisation. So GDPR is very much on the back of some of those nation-state attacks, some of those very large corporate vulnerabilities that have occurred in the market. So I commend you to look at Microsoft.com/GDPR, so Microsoft.com/GDPR, to look at the testing tools, or work with our friends here at Cloud Made Simple, who can take you through the necessary steps so that you can attest that you've reached that compliance. Now, the second last bullet point there is our intelligent security graph, which is billions of transactions every day that go through the Microsoft Cloud, whether it's the Azure Cloud, the Outlook Cloud, the Office 365 Cloud, the very substantial network that we run as servers and networks and services around the planet. 2 billion authentications a day, hundreds of millions of emails a day. And so through that, we're getting very early insight to threats that are out there. And by way of example, many of you are probably familiar with the ransomware attacks of last year, Petya and WannaCrypt, right? There was a third one that you didn't hear about. It was called Bad Rabbit. Bad Rabbit's a production company. Bad Rabbit was this particular one. So Bad Rabbit hit. We picked it up as patient zero, and we were able to, within 14 minutes, inoculate everybody in the planet, including notifying our partners like Trend Micro, Symantec, Kaspersky, and all those antivirus, anti-malware vendors of that particular threat that existed in the networks out there. So pretty cool that most of those vendors out there in the market today that you may be buying security software for, note that you don't really need to when you've got Windows 10, but if you are using any of those vendors, are now highly dependent on Microsoft, alerting them of new threats so that they can update the signatures in their AV software. We go to the next slide. I start to give you a bit of a breakdown on the components that make up that thing called Microsoft 365. There's an E3 version and an E5 version. In the E3 version, as mentioned, you not only get your Office 365, which many of you are using today for Outlook, calendaring, Pro Plus for co-creation of documents, OneDrive and SharePoint for sharing information and doing analytical work, plus the security and compliance technologies, data loss prevention. But you now also get this enterprise mobility and security technology as well, which adds the ability to integrate with your existing Active Directory deployments if you have one, right? That identity is then protected as you move towards using cloud services, including thousands of third-party cloud applications out there. You also get Intune, which enables you to manage not only the classic PC and Mac devices, but also now manage your mobile phone fleet, your iPad fleet, your tablet fleet as well. And I'll have a slide later on that shows you how meaningful that is when we think about the fact that many of you will probably have a BYO model where your employees bring their own devices to work and they may have personal data as well as your corporate data coexisting on that device. But I've got some nice slides on that coming up later, which actually marries into the information protection model, which is where you're able to protect documents, classify documents as read-only to certain groups of users, not accessible to the broad community, modifiable by certain individuals. And no matter where that document goes, on your network, off your network, on a USB stick, it is only openable, only manageable to the credentials that you set by using the Azure information protection capabilities. And of course, the advanced threat analytics, which is giving you some insights to what's going on. And I know there's a demonstration in the security scorecard at the end of the session, which gives you some insights to how those threat analytics work. And there's also Windows 10 Enterprise. So you get some additional credential guards where your credentials are on your device, not passed clear over the network, device guarding, things like Ink, Cortana at Work for voice activation, and many other things that Windows 10 offers over and above your standard Windows 10 deployment or your XP 7 or 8 deployment. So some very big strength items that are being placed in Windows 10 Enterprise E3. We go to the next slide. If you decide to move up to the E5 SKU, the advanced SKU, the top of the line, the premium, you also get in the Office space your conferencing capabilities, Power BI, and very advanced analytics. Kind of think of that Delve Analytics as being your Fitbit for work, so you can determine your own health and own well-being in terms of the amount of time you spend in meetings, doing email after hours, etc. You, as a manager, can also see that from the perspective of your staff. So you can see that staff that may be overworking, or even that individual who may not be working enough, and the connections they have within their business. And a lot more. Yep.
So there's also the business version, which is the cut down version, which is the not, it's only below $20 to combine both of them.
Yes, it is. So you can get that as an add-on to the business edition.
Yep.
And the enterprise edition is where we get all these advanced security features.
Yep.
And including the security and compliance, advanced threat protection, the security management, the e-discovery capabilities important for compliance to GDPR and the national disclosure regulations, and then even more Active Directory capabilities around identity management and access across non-cloud-based applications, on-premise applications, additional advanced information protection, and the cloud app security, which deals with that shadow IT, detecting when users are using applications you haven't sanctioned in your business, comes in that E5 category. And then Endpoint Security, which is an incredible piece of technology. Now this slide, there's really enterprise mobility and security has got a lot to it, but I've tried to, in this slide, give you the 5 juicy pieces that enterprise mobility and security gives. First of all, on the left-hand side is that Active Directory Premium, which is the ability to protect the identity that you've already got in your organization, established through years of using Active Directory. The policies and procedures in your business are protected as you then interlock and interconnect with cloud applications in the Microsoft space and even the non-Microsoft cloud space. And that's where the cloud app security technology kicks in to give you enterprise-grade single sign-on support to not only your applications in your premise today and to the Microsoft cloud, but also to thousands of applications that exist in the internet today. So, Box, Salesforce, Dropbox, ServiceNow, Google, I could go on, but there's thousands, so I won't. But you know what I'm saying. So instead of having that threat of credentials being exploited because you've got 16 different applications, 16 different usernames, 16 different passwords, and what do people do? Write it down on a piece of paper or use weak passwords. You can now gravitate to using a single strong username password combination, probably that of Office 365, and access seamlessly to those thousands of other applications that exist in the public domain that you can then, when you have an employee that leaves, you only have to disable their account in one location in Office 365 in Active Directory, and they're immediately disabled to access in Salesforce, Facebook, if you've got a corporate Facebook account. And that's a really good example. Malicious employees that left you disgruntled. You don't want them having access to things like Facebook to vandalize your page because you haven't had a chance to turn off their credentials because you've got so many to turn off. Turn it off in one place, and all of those other applications that they've had access to is immediately disabled as well. Intune on the right-hand side, enabling you to protect your users, the devices and the apps, define the characteristics of how that user has access to that application, what location they can access that application from. If they're now trying to access a document off your Teams site from a device that has never been on the network before, challenge them. Challenge them with an MFA, what's called multi-factor authentication. You probably get that in your banking environment when you do a transfer to a new business and your phone vibrates and you've got to put in your security code. It's the same thing in business with respect to your applications. The user's gone and they're using some kiosk PC, airport PC, signing on, trying to do a transaction, access a document. You challenge them by pinging their phone and they have to put in the credentials to approve access from that particular device. Or certain applications only accessible from certain locations on your corporate network, from their home, but nowhere else, and who those users' characteristics might be. And then finally, the advanced threat analytics, which, as I mentioned before, has got all of that security graph supporting it. Go to the next slide. This is a little bit of a drill down on that top example, which is that the cloud app security and the Azure Active Directory capabilities. And if we build this slide out, you see you've got your on-premise world on the left-hand side, you've got Azure Active Directory in the middle, and you've got a whole set of cloud services on the right-hand side, either Microsoft managed or third-party managed services. The idea is that you've got that single sign-on, self-service password reset. After printers problems, the second biggest call you get in an IT department is password reset. So we make that a self-service function, again coupled to the MFA authentication, verification of that reset through the mobile phone that you've registered within that Azure Active Directory. So a very simple connection to support that process. We build that out to the next slide. Here we have the ability for you to have a simple, single, personalized branded web page, for example, myapps.microsoft.com, to which you can access through your Mac, through your PC, through your iPad, through your Android device, and do things like managing your accounts, password resets, and defining things like application access requests. And the last one, which I really like, in the next slide, is this one, which is this BYOD model. So once that user has registered their device, joined that device to your corporate network, to your corporate workspace, they can still have on their device their personal applications. And they also have a set of applications that are automatically deployed from the company portal onto that BYOD device, which could be for Word documents, PowerPoint files, spreadsheets, and the like. And through the fact that they've got multiple identity, the corporate identity, as well as their personal identity, they can still work with that application. But because a document is flagged as being protected, they may not be able to copy data from that corporate document into, say, their Gmail account. And so we've got the intelligence that embeds itself inside the iPad, inside the Samsung device, to say, no, you can't copy that data. It's protected. It's defined as being corporate only. You can't cut and paste it. No, you can't even do a screenshot. You know, you hold the button down, you get a screenshot, and paste the image. It's protected. And so anybody who's got sensitive price lists, working on confidential documents, HR information, that information is simply protected by turning on the Azure Information Protection Policies enabled on your iPads, on your Samsung devices, and of course on PCs and Macs as well. Just as a little sideline, you can't even take, if you take a photo of an image on one of those devices, you think, oh, I can get around this, Bill. I'll just take a photo of that document and then share that off my phone. We actually embed a digital signature in that image, so we can track down the individual with the help of the CloudMate Simple team or your own appropriate delegated staff, could track down the individual who's compromised your organisation by having taken a photo of a screen and then shared that in the public domain. I talked about this when I was in Darwin a couple of weeks ago to the local government up there, and they've had a few issues with leakage by councillors of documents into the press, and they went, we want that now. This is going to be awesome to help us protect and prevent that sort of leakage that's occurring of sensitive information into the public domain. So let's move on to the next slide. And if you have got, and I know we're all time poor, but if you have got 30 minutes, maybe you can go to that URL and just watch a longer, much more detailed demonstration of EM&S, which is part of Microsoft 365. And Brad Anderson, who's our VP of that technology, does a really good job in about 30 minutes showing you. Please be patient with the first minute. Very corny American popcorn humour. So maybe jump the first minute and start watching it from there. Thanks. We'll go to the next slide. These next two slides I've put in really just help you understand the difference between your baseline Windows 10 and then extending that with the EM&S suite. You can see that there's a lot that comes in the box around security, around encrypting data at rest, the BitLocker technologies. You can see the stuff there around some levels of single sign-on that come with baseline Windows 10. But when we add the EM&S as part of the M365, the Microsoft 365 suite, you see a very comprehensive set of additional information protection, device management, and identity management services that come to bear. If we go to the next slide, I've done the same thing for Office 365. So you've got your Office 365, and again, thank you for using Office 365. And in the box, there is some level of MFA, multi-factor authentication, advanced security management, so suspicious activity, mobile device management, including device wipe, selective wipe capabilities, and rights management services. But again, as you add EMS, you add a whole nother level of security over and above the Office suite to do threat analytics, certificate provisioning, self-service management, advanced reporting, very advanced multi-factor authentication, and the tracking and notification of shared documents. So as we move towards the end of my session, and I'm conscious we've only got 5 minutes left, I did want to position the technologies on the left-hand side, which is the Office 365, E365, in the construct of those darker boxes, which are specific units that we've established in Microsoft to attack the attackers. The Digital Crimes Unit is particularly meaningful. I work with that unit because it's also linked to the Australian Federal Police, where we go on the offensive against cyber criminals, and hence why we were able to attack not only the bad rabbit, but we're also able to detect threats that were emerging out of Ukraine in this particular instance, and we're able to work with the Ukrainian force, the police force and law enforcement to take down a particular crime unit that existed there. So that Digital Crimes Unit is ever vigilant, watching what's going on the internet and taking proactive steps with appropriate police enforcement bodies to remove those individuals from the web. We move on to the next slide. I sort of wanted to put it in the context of the groups that we do work with. So I mentioned the AFP, but you can see Interpol, you can see Europol, you can see the American policy enforcement. But over on the right-hand side, you can see we've got direct links where we're feeding from our security graph and all the usage of the technology we have into Google, so they know what's coming, Facebook, Twitter, Trend, and those other vendors are highly dependent on us now, giving them insight, given the vast size of the cloud that we operate, advanced notification about some of those threats. And a lot of this stuff is all running in data centers which have global certification, US government certification, certifications compliant to certain industries, and within the Australian, which is the bottom box, you can see that Australia is called out there for IRAP and ASD certification as well. So we have your data sitting in data centers which have gone through very extensive regulatory and compliance testing, protection testing in that area. Cool. So in closing, again, I wanted to put Office in the context of just one element and the security elements we offer, the extension of that now with EMS, which gives you Microsoft 365. And then we can look at future broadcasts like this to discuss all the capabilities that sit inside Azure, Windows Server, Dynamics, and SQL Server, and get ourselves prepared for GDPR, which is only a few short months away. Thank you for that. I'll pass back to the team at Cloud Made Simple.
Thanks so much for that, Phil. And I know there was an enormous amount of information there for people to absorb. That's where we come in. Certainly, you can give us a call, speak to us anytime about the details of those particular products. We're also obviously going to be making this webinar available, so you can go through it at your own leisure. I think just to sum it all up is, so what do you do next? What are the next steps? Well, one thing is within Office 365, you can actually look at your security score, and I'm actually going to do a demo of that in the next couple of seconds just to show you how easy that is. We're also going to send you through a security checklist, and that's just going to be great for you to tick off the things that you're doing today and maybe get a chance to sort of review your revise your current policies and procedures that you're doing now. So to make we'll put some simple things in place that will help protect your business. And the fourth one there is, it'd be great if you can spend some time educating your staff about the risks and what you can do about it. From a technology point of view, that's where we can certainly help you out in putting things in place from a technology point of view to help you with education, to help you putting the right policies and procedures in place. So if there's anything we can do for you, please don't hesitate to give one of our IT consultants a call. So what I wanted to do next is just actually show you how easy it is to go into, show how easy it is to do your own secure score. So I've logged into Garrett, who's our make-believe business. And when you go into your Office 365 portal and log in, there's something to go to called Security and Compliance. So you click on that. And you click on it again.
Pop-up's blocked at the top right.
Pop-up's blocked. So we need to unblock that. So this is our security in place. So always, yeah.
And then click on the link again.
Okay. We have a very secure environment. And what you'll come up with now is a thing about security score. So it'll actually mention now what is our security score for this particular company, and you can see it's 77 out of 364. So that's not particularly great. So now you can go into the detail of that and actually see what you can do to increase the security on your Office 365. And it actually is fantastic because it actually tells you what you actually need to do. So here it comes up here. It actually tells you the actions that you can take. But first of all, you can actually then see change this to work out what's best for your business. The more secure you make the business, sometimes the harder it is to do day-to-day things because there's more protocols to put in place, et cetera, et cetera. So you can work out what are the best things you need to do for your business. And so as you come down here, you'll actually see all the different elements to it. So if I want to enable MFA, that will actually increase my score by 50 points. And then it actually shows you how you can actually implement that. Or if you need a hand with that, you give us a call and we can do that.
Yeah, I think the great thing about this also is that by looking at the actions, it also tells you what the cost, whether it's a low cost or high cost in terms of value, and the user impact that it's going to have. So there are some things that will have, as you can see, their user impact is low and implementation cost is low, but then it also tells you what your score will increase by. So they're the kind of important pointers to note when you do go through this.
Yeah, so that's an easy thing for you to do as a bit of homework from that.
If you can't access the secure score area, please do get in touch with us, because it might just be that you don't have the right admin access for it, and we can pick that up for you.
So I'd like to thank you all for attending today. I'd also thank Phil for joining us from Microsoft. Fantastic insight. I think the last thing to do is really go back into your business now and have address what is your security plan, and put things in place that will stop an attack from happening, because if it hasn't happened to you today, it unfortunately most probably will. So on behalf of Cloud Made Simple, on behalf of Deepti, Tom and Cole and Phil, thank you very much for joining us. The next webinar we're going to have is going to be on April the 4th, which is the first Wednesday of next month. And we're going to be talking about Microsoft Azure, which is the Microsoft cloud. And that's the cloud we use to put many applications in for our customers. And we're just going to go through that and the benefits of doing that. So again, thank you very much for tuning in. If you've got any questions, no one's put forward any questions to this time. So if you have got any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call. Thank you so much.